Welcome back to Morning Express with me, Sophia Wanuna. Now, every Monday on our segment, The Way It Is, we analyze big stories that have made headlines in the past couple of days, stories that are still developing. And this morning, I'm joined by Danson, Mungatana, former Assistant Minister, Justice and Constitutional Affairs, as well as Benji, Ndolo, founder of Organization for National Empowerment, or One,
yes,
if you like.
Yes.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Good morning, madam.
Thank you for making time for us.
Thank you.
It's going to be a very interesting discussion. I look forward to your thoughts on quite a number of issues we'll be discussing this morning. Yeah. But let's start with the ICC and the motion to withdraw. It's a push being propagated by the Jubilee government, and we've seen a lot of opposition. We saw what happened in Parliament the other day, and we've had critics of it say that it's really like a tantrum, a political tantrum by the Jubilee team. What's your take?
Thank you, Sophia. You know, in international law, there is a principle called fundamental change of circumstances. This is a principle that is close to what you call in normal law the doctrine of frustration. Just to quickly understand it, if let's say I have a contract to supply meat in Nairobi and my cattle is in Northeastern, and we sign a contract with Kenya Meat Commission, and then suddenly the county government says we are not exporting anymore, they pass a law. I'm then frustrated, so I cannot fulfill my obligations. Okay, I am entitled to be discharged. ICC is a result of a contract, an international contract, which Kenya entered as a country. When there is fundamental change of circumstance, you are entitled under international law to actually excuse yourself. And this is exactly what has happened. You have individuals who previous to this were ordinary citizens or members of parliament. Then they become head of state and deputy head of state. When that happens, there is fundamental change of circumstance. And I believe on the basis of that and many other reasons that were argued in Parliament, I believe that the action that Parliament took is in the right direction. Of course, there are other principles like sovereignty and so on, but fundamental change of circumstance, I think, justifies that decision.
Benji, Jubilee argues that the ICC has not reciprocated the goodwill shown by the accused. They have cooperated, they've maintained, they will continue to do so. But in the recent past, some of the things we're hearing them quoting, the rejection to move the cases to Kenya or Tanzania, and also to stagger the hearings to allow for the Deputy President, as he said, to perform his duties as the Deputy President of the country. Some of the reasons they're saying perhaps go to indicate the goodwill is not being reciprocated, and that is why they feel, okay, we're respecting you, we're cooperating, you're not reciprocating.
Unfortunately, Sophia, this is obviously the kind of advice that the two principals, the two executives, the two ICC suspects are receiving. I won't mince any words. This is tragic. This is misadvice of the highest level. There are also the philosophical principles in law of approaching the court with clean hands in pursuit of fairness and justice. So, for example, when the Star reports, and I quote verbatim, that
the Standard,
the Standard, that the International Criminal Court, quote, must ensure that the trials of the Kenyan president and deputy do not overlap, President Kenyatta warned yesterday. This is not the kind of language that you address international judicial process in. This is a court, no matter how much maligned by African states, that commands a lot of respect around the world. This is a court that has signatories of very many countries in the Commonwealth and around the world. So again, it is in your best interest to cooperate, to be seen to cooperate, to continue to cooperate. I think that, unfortunately, what we're seeing with the heated rhetoric, and that you can hear from Mheshimiwa Mungatana as well, is I think that there's a setting of the stage for non-cooperation. I would like to say on this show, because Moses Kuria is one of the commentators that, you know, has been active on KTN and what have you, as well as others, that in the event that non-cooperation happens, the warrants of arrest and pursuit will not be on the advisors, will not be on Mheshimiwa Mungatana, will not be on Moses Kuria. These warrants would be fairly and squarely on William Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta. It is a very, very, very unfortunate circumstance. It is something that you don't want, where not only does your state now become an international pariah, but you yourself as an individual become a fugitive from justice. But always Benji, looking behind you, always wondering what the next thing would be, always looking at different airspaces and where you can travel, where you can't go. I couldn't imagine that we could come to that.
But why get into that situation? Very quickly, what Mheshimiwa is saying, this is now president and deputy president. They will cooperate. They're just asking that to be allowed not to be there at the same time. Maybe the schedule will change, but as it stands right now, they could end up being there.
Yeah, but the problem is you cannot dictate to a court how it's going to run a case, number one. Number two, a judicial process does not take into account political considerations, so to speak. It's the other way around. And so one of the pieces of advice that was given was that even as these two individuals ran for power, they knew that they faced these cases. They were already on trial. The fact that they should be eligible or not was already, debatable and in question. And quite frankly, if they continue down this path, it would only send one message to the country and to the world, that the pursuit of political power in Kenya was only to use the country as a shield. Right. Again, sounds cynical, very regrettable, very unfortunate.
I first of all want to argue this point. Yeah. The president does not write, and it does not write the papers. I think we need to be very clear. The best quote that you could have is that it will not be right, and I think I watched it on television, for the trials to happen at the same time. Expressing concern does not mean you are not going to cooperate, okay? What someone writes on the papers, that is upon, whoever decides to write or interpret.
But we have that clip.
But I also
was quoted.
No, I want to say this. Yeah. I want to say this, that people who forget that this is a president we are dealing with are obviously people who have forgotten what sovereignty is all about. And we are not advising the president. This is clear. It's very clear. Look at what has happened here in our neighbor here in Somalia. The moment you have decapitation of the political head, that country doesn't hold. And you can have all the theories you want, but even that ICC would never walk into Somalia. I want to tell you, and Kenyans must now be very clear on who are the theorists, who are for this country and who are not for this country. Let me tell you, the moment you remove the head of state from the country, be it by a coup, by a criminal process, by a military process, by whatever process, and Kenyans experience this, let's not forget, Benji and other people who have not been maybe in direct, what it means to be holding the country together, what it means to keep the institutions together. You can joke around with the fact, oh, this is governor, you hate him after you elect him. This is president, you hate him the next day you elect him. The moment you remove people of authority that we have put, the situation changes in the country. But they're not being removed. No, I'm saying this because people tend to forget that it's a cardinal principle. You strike the shepherd, you spread the sheep. You confuse the sheep, and Kenya experienced this in a few hours in 1981 in the coup attempt. 82, sorry. In a few hours. There was so much chaos. Why? Because there was a shake-up. And I'm not saying this is exactly the same, but I'm trying to say that we have a duty. I have a duty as Mungatana, and Benji has a duty, so do you, to protect the body politic of this country. And the only way we can do that is me as a Kenyan. I must respect the Chief Justice and hold him, protect him. I must respect the President, protect him, the Speaker, the basic institutions of this country. This is patriotism. This is what makes this country work. And people who theorize about these things are people who have never really suffered the absence of these things. Even jump across here in a country like Sudan, and I'll give you that example. If Sudan today did not have the president, or if he had been arrested or something had happened to him, we would not have South Sudan today. The peace process would not have started.
That's a whole different situation.
It's not.
This
I'm
is
trying to
Uhuru Kenyatta, who pledged to Kenyans ahead of the elections. He told us in the presidential debate that this is a personal issue. We will take care of it. But now it's become a national issue.
No, Sophia. If my daughter is getting married, or previously before she got engaged to some other guy, we had a quarrel with the family of that guy.
Right.
And we were going to court, and then my daughter is getting married to this man. There's a fundamental change of circumstance. I cannot go after my son-in-law. The day before, he was not. The day after, there is a change. And we must appreciate this, that the country has undergone change. This is not a question of Uhuru or the deputy president. It's not their issue alone. It affects all of us, and we must accept it. Whether it is their personal, and I know it is their personal decision to cooperate, but we must drive the point that whatever is happening out there affects all of us. And when there is a fundamental change of circumstance, it's important for us as Kenyans not to start thinking, that is Uhuru's. It is not Uhuru's business. It is not Ruto's business. It's our business. And it's important for us to remember we are a sovereign state. If this sovereignty is being attacked, if it's by a military coup, if it's by an international court, if it is by whatever means, we must protect that.
All right, Benji, let me bring you in. And you remember, if you watched the debate in Parliament, the motion as tabled by a majority leader was amended later. Secretary Johnson, nominated member of Parliament, raising the question of non-cooperation, which was very clearly outlined, that had it been passed as was, then Kenya was saying, if this succeeds, we are saying we will not cooperate. Do you feel the timing, this thing was all rushed, they had not thought through what exactly was being done? Because that was a major trap they were setting themselves.
Good question. What you're hearing from Mheshimiwa Mungatana is basically the modus operandi and the operational style of Jubilee, which is, for example, the euphemism for impunity is sovereignty. And that's pretty much what he's saying is, look, you know, I'm accused of this and that, I'm a head of state, basically, leave me alone. This is very dangerous. The thing is, they will never say that they were not told. The entire country's destiny, and he's right, this is not about one person. The entire country's destiny is in peril. I can tell you for sure that the actions of Parliament last week were historic, and sadly so. The attempt to have all these belligerent, outrageous, ridiculous members of Parliament making all these impassioned claims.
Sophia, I have to object there. I really must.
That's exactly what they were.
No.
That is exactly what they were.
I don't agree, because Benji, you know,
they were putting.
We cannot use this station to come against honorable members. These are elected people. Whatever your views, and I respect them, you can address those views. But members of Parliament are elected people.
They can be elected, but they can also be shallow. They can be greedy. Well, let's talk about, for example, the issue of MP's pay.
Yes.
You cannot justify continuing to doggedly go against what the electors are saying and say that I'm elected, and if I'm greedy, then Kenyans are greedy.
Fine, I don't agree with their principle, but I don't have to abuse that person.
No, let's refer to them as members of Parliament.
It's not about abuse. What I'm saying is that on this debate, on this debate, the parliamentarians, as usual, are misguided, are shallow on the issues, are misleading the country, and are putting their leaders in danger. What would have been better, and what is even worse, is the fact that Uhuru and Ruto did not condemn what was happening in Parliament, gives tacit approval. But the level of that debate, which my friend Johnson Sakaja tried to salvage, really puts, again, and I want to be clear, Mheshimiwa, it puts the leaders of Jubilee in a tighter corner. And 2 years from now, I don't want you to come and say, well, we didn't know. You see, Your Excellency, we're trying to do this, we're trying to do that. Because that's how things work here in Kenya. We run, we make a lot of noise with very little research. And then 2 years down the road, you say, well, you know, I wish we did the local tribunal.
Yes.
I wish we settled the ID. I mean, it's ridiculous. IDPs are just being settled a day before the trials start.
No.
How do you think that looks?
Now, let me just say on that one.
How do you think that looks?
Yes.
You see,
we look like jokers.
There are people in this country whose business, modus operandi, is to look at this is what government is doing. Let me oppose it so that I make news.
I'm not one of those.
And this is the way CORD operates. This is the way the whole brigade of people who acclaimed commentaries and whatever, they never see what is supposed to happen. Look, you have to ask yourself, what is better? Is it restorative justice or punitive or retributive justice? In this case, if the ICC really, and Bensouda was down there and he was being told, what we need are our shambas. What we need is to resettle. Now, the Kibaki administration started the process. They did it in a different way. Mm-hmm. They said, we will buy houses, we will buy land, we will build for you houses. This administration has said, we are going to do it differently. We're going to ask you, with this a small amount of money, you should be able to get started reasonably wherever you choose to start. Now, someone wants to turn that and say, no, it's a bad thing because it's being done today or it's being done tomorrow. What does the ordinary mwananchi care about? The ordinary mwananchi wants to see this thing is settled. He wants to see his life returned to somewhere near normal. And I want to say, this is where ICC failed. Because why was ICC following this? It's so that they can get justice, okay? Is justice to get me? I am an IDP. I was affected for example, in clashes, and I am now living in an IDP camp. Is my justice to get my life restarted, or is my justice to see deputy president or president serving 100 years or whatever years in The Hague? Mm-hmm. I want to say that this is exactly where people say the law is an ass. Right. You cannot do things that are against me, and you are saying you're fighting for me. For example, if you have a traffic offense, you know, and I'm crossing the road, you knock me down, and you are the driver. Is it my interest for you to be jailed for 10 years, or is it my interest for me to get compensation for my leg? So I want to say that the reason we have to raise these questions is, why is ICC only insisting on retributive justice and not restorative justice? And why is it that their operatives and those who are holding views in support of them in this country, they have done a lot of that, you know, to try and get support. You know, why is it that they are raising doubts on what the government is doing for its people?
Sophia, allow me to clarify something in 2 sentences, then we can go to the next question. First of all, I am not speaking here on behalf of CORD. CORD have not offered me any contract, any role. I do talk to some elements in CORD, as I do Jubilee. I run a lobby whose flagship work is to do advocacy for a better Kenya, to influence policy through lobbying for a better Kenya. So as such, we talk to everybody, and I think it would be unfair to, you know, to myself, to viewers, to sit me here as a CORD person when I'm under no such brief. But let me also just correct Mheshimiwa and say that one of the ways members of parliament can earn their rightful respect is if, for example, they are that passionate and that focused when it comes to discussing the issue of how much are Kenyans paying for food, and the fact that a lot of Kenyans are actually unable to make ends meet, are unable to eat, etc. That is not happening, as the VAT bill crucifies majority of poor, impoverished, unemployed, underemployed Kenyans. These MPs are jumping up and down, screaming about many things, trying to curry favor with the suspects, trying to go out on junkets and what have you, trying to, you know, shadow box and stand against. It's really, as I was saying the other day on Twitter, it's akin to trying to yell at the UN in Geneva standing on the bonnet of your car. To me, it's ridiculous.
Let's go to the notion that some local non-governmental organization lobby groups are to blame for some of the woes facing the president and the deputy president. For instance, the case in declining the request to move the cases to Tanzania or to Kenya, one of the judges lashed out, if we could say, at Gladwell Otieno, who signed that particular letter, KPTJ. And the group, which was successfully, it had asked the court not to move the cases because they said it would pose a danger.
Allow me to take that one.
To the witnesses. Let me finish.
Yes.
Pose a danger to the witnesses. The judge said that Madam Otieno, quote, was trying to achieve through the ICC what she was unable to achieve in the presidential election petition, where Africa alongside others failed to have the election of the president annulled. What do you have to say now?
Let me share with the country some of the discussions that are happening in the background, because again, by virtue of my work, I come across, you know, different information feeds. Right. I can tell you that the conduct of that particular judge, I believe it's the Nigerian judge, Obesunju or something,
is quite a hard name.
All right, it's quite a difficult name. I can tell you that the conduct of that judge is under discussion in many circles, and the timing of the judge's pronouncements vis-a-vis the Nigerian president's visit to Kenya is also being looked at, in question. All right, so these are the facts. And let me say this as well. A lot of NGOs have been accused of cobbling up cases and coaching witnesses and what have you. My question to the country is the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, whose officers drive around in GK cars, and Mheshimiwa knows this better than me, is that an NGO? Is some of the things, the background upon which this stuff happened, which are in WikiLeaks, is that also an NGO? And finally, President Kenyatta has been very clear that we are innocent and we are eager to prove ourselves innocent, if for nothing else, and I'm quoting him, to clear our good names.
What do you have to say about the same? Because
why now the anger?
Let me just say this, Sophia, that I'm not bringing into question what Benji does, but when you are holding an opinion that is held by the opposition, then it is correct for me to say that is a code position. Right. But I'm not saying that he is code. But I want to say
Thank you.
It's ridiculous that when this court is saying that we agree with your view, then the court is fine. But when a judge says no, there's a question here that we have to ask. No, that the conduct of that judge, there's a problem with that judge. It is ridiculous. We as Kenyans out here are looking and are saying there is a problem. An NGO, first of all, that court is supposed to be giving priority to state actors. The NGO by Gladwell Otieno is not a state actor, you know, first of all. And secondly, how can a decision be made that says you can stagger, your deputy president can stagger the attendance in his case. Right. And then a letter is written by someone called Gladwell Otieno, and then the court suddenly reflects the whole idea, and there is a state actor ignores what African Union has passed 53-1 in a motion. 53 states ignores the presentation of the state actor Kenya and says no, we are going with this NGO. There is a problem. That's why we are saying in this court itself, it is a political court. Yeah, it is a political court, and there is a problem which in the larger sphere of things, African leaders have already made a statement. In Addis Ababa, they have said 53-1. They have questioned this court. And you should also, Kenyans should, and I'm talking to the country now, yes. Kenyans should ask themselves, why is it that countries like the United States are not in it? You know, India, all these big countries, because they knew this court has a certain agenda it wants to achieve. And you know, even when they were opening this trial, what were the prosecutors saying? We want to make Kenya as an example. You know, it's like we want, and you know, Kenya is a big fish. It's like punishing South Africa. We want to make this look as you know, this president and whoever look as ridiculous, you know, interpreted as possible.
All right.
So that they can make this thing that people believe Africans are not good enough even to govern themselves.
I don't think
court has a problem.
I honestly don't think you should allow Mungatana to get away with this kind of stuff. This stuff is not just. I'm trying to find soft words. Okay. It's cruel.
Please do.
It's cruel.
Okay.
It's cruel because Mungatana, as a former member of parliament and assistant minister, as an educated person, knows full well that a lot of the countries that are not signatories to the Rome Statute and what have you do not, by the maturity and scope of their own institutions, allow impunity. There is no way, for example, you could be accused of crimes against humanity or terrorism in the United States and get away with it.
No, no, no.
There's absolutely no way. Let me just finish and then you can respond. Let me just finish and then you can respond. In 1995, yes. Timothy McVeigh, a Caucasian white American, blew up the federal building in Oklahoma, causing the death of, I think, 100-something people. Timothy McVeigh was pursued by the authorities, apprehended, put in, and taken to the gas chambers. In 1998, Osama bin Laden did what he did to the American embassy. Again, not even on local American soil. Right. He was pursued for a long time. He was then caught at 3 a.m. in Pakistan, in Ashoka, killed, and his body buried. There's no way you can be accused of killing 3,000 people or 1,000 people and expect to be a fugitive for justice for the foreseeable future. So these are systems that are intolerant
let me say quickly
to wrongdoing and crime, and that work for the people.
There's something I need to say here very quickly. Who authorized the international wars that America has been engaged outside? And it is in whose views, if you go to the people who have been bombed, who have received, they have been in the receiving end of the fighting and the whatever that Bush has done in the name of democracy in other countries. The killings that have happened, thousands of people.
That is a false argument.
Let's bring this discussion back.
That's a false argument.
Let me say this. Yes. That those countries, it is ridiculous and neo-colonial for someone to believe that Americans cannot suffer from impunity.
You are fooling Kenyans, Mheshimiwa Mungatana. You know very well that Saddam Hussein was in violation of UN Resolution 1641. And this is why we're here, to give information and to verify. Google is your friend. Saddam Hussein was in violation of all the no-fly zone communiques from 1991 that allowed the war to stop. He was in violation of UN Resolution 1641. UN weapons inspectors were in his country prior to Bush addressing the country and making a declaration of war with a 48 hours notice. With a coalition.
This could continue. Gentlemen.
No, it's very important because Jubilee has had a very good attempt to try to fool Kenyans and try to run a false argument on imperialism versus African states and what have you.
But it is the fact. It is a fact that 53 states voted versus one state in the AU. Is Benji telling us? And
but AU is a failure. I'm sorry.
With respect,
AU is a big-time failure.
Are you telling us that you are so superior in your arguments that all these other countries are wrong, except what you're saying? I'm saying this, that there is something wrong. This is a victor's court. It decides who is to be prosecuted. It decides, like, for example, now the office of the prosecutor herself is coming from a country that has documented human rights abuses, the Gambia. You know, there's a problem in that country. Why hasn't that person been removing warrants or going for them in that country? You know, we have to raise,
she is and she will.
We have to raise those issues.
How do you know that, Benji?
No, let me tell you. From tomorrow, Mheshimiwa Mungatana, I wish he was espousing all these views when we were signing the Rome Statute in 1998 and domesticating it in 2005. But let me just say, from tomorrow, you will see a bunch of very dark dudes in The Hague, arriving in Italian suits, driving the latest German cars.
Okay, Benji.
That is a spectacle that tells you most African states are... Kenya, a lot of people have accused of being a failed state.
Yes.
Kenya is not a failed state yet. Kenya is failing. And some of us are here to urge caution. Mheshimiwa.
All right. Today, the Deputy President travels to The Hague. Tomorrow, his trial begins. We have quite a number of members from the Jubilee accompanying him. 100. But we also have members from CORD accompanying him as well. And a lot of outcry over, okay, so you're leaving work, going to show support. What are your thoughts about that?
In fact, Sophia, this is exactly what I'm telling you. I'm telling you, the Deputy President, this is not a William Ruto case. There's a fundamental change of circumstance. Previous to that, it was The Hague versus William Ruto. Now it's our Deputy President.
Are you traveling?
I'm not traveling myself, but I'm just putting this point, that it is the Deputy President who is going to be away from this country. And for as long, you know, Kenyans have never really appreciated this, that we have always had an head of state. We've always had a vice president. The day we are going to have these people out, and we had that problem for a while, as I've said before, we must agree that it is a high office, and the MPs in their own whatever, they are showing support. And when an MP travels, it's not just traveling. An MP is an elected representative. They are making a statement which the world needs to read.
Your
that
thoughts?
Circumstances have changed,
Yes.
and we ought to treat it like that son-in-law. We had a problem with him. Now he's my son-in-law. We have to treat him differently. Yes, and we can wait
and
for...
some CORD members are traveling as well.
I have a fundamental problem. I can't speak for any CORD member, and if it's 5 of them out of 100, that's a 5% back. It wouldn't worry me too much. But I personally have a fundamental problem with our Kenyan legislators. We thought the 10th Parliament was a very bad parliament,
yes,
for many reasons. Turns out the 11th Parliament is worse. Personally, I find that most Kenyan legislators are lazy, don't do a lot of research, are not hardworking, are not focused. They're not even in tune and in touch with what the constituents need. And that is why many a time, after 5, 10, 15, 20 years, most of them have nothing to show for it. It's unfortunate because this country has very urgent. This country has very urgent problems. We still have the problems of lack of water. We still have the problems of malaria. We still have the problems of
people
crime.
Who theorize from outside, who can never actually get elected, are very good at saying.
Well, I haven't tried. I could maybe get elected.
The moment Sonko is elected, no, this is not a good man. The moment Basharia is elected, this is not a good man.
We were beseeching you guys to even pay taxes.
That is wrong, you know.
And all you do is add emoluments.
And I think, and with respect, Benji, you are an educated man.
It's a very serious issue.
You are an educated man.
These guys will earn 1,000 shillings a day, $1,000 a day.
Let's not go to what members of parliament should or should not.
But I want to say this, Sophia, that it's a mark of civilization for any country to obey the institutions they set, to respect them, because that's what keeps us together. If I can stand here, let's say my brother or my younger brother is elected as an MP, and because I am older than him or I'm more educated than him, I start telling him all manner of things because he's an elected member of parliament. I think that is the beginning of destroying the civilization we have. If you can stand and slap a policeman, that's the beginning of the end of civilization.
As an MP did in
if you can stand and abuse a judge, you know, and as those activists, your friends who do it,
no,
when they
some
go
of
to
them
court,
are doing now.
When they go to court, and
judges in the Hague are being abused now by suspects.
They abuse judges, sing songs in court, show disrespect to court, or attack the Chief Justice.
Let's bring this
We are
back.
having a problem, and I need to say this. I have been in those institutions, and I know that you don't fix a road in one day. You don't fix a hospital in one day. Right. There are many things that go into it, and when you hear people talk like that, you can only say there's a problem.
Okay, Mheshimiwa, I want us to wind up this discussion on the ICC cases. We have other things to touch and talk about, but finally, we've seen a lot of witnesses.
But he also left Martha Karua in her hour of need. He's my brother here, and we have to keep talking.
Let's focus.
I didn't leave her in the hour.
That's how it looked.
It is politics.
That's
we asked for negotiations.
No, we have to hold him to account.
No. We asked for negotiations. I talked to the party. that we need to negotiate. If you're going to change systems, you don't come to KTN or you don't sit there as a loser in an election and say you will change government.
Okay.
You need to be with people that you can influence government thinking and therefore deliver. People like Moi didn't stay where they were. People like Kibaki didn't stay where they are and Uhuru didn't stay where they were to be able to this is just politics. You don't just stay in opposition.
Withdrawing of witnesses, we've seen very many of them.
Killing of witnesses.
We do not know about killing, withdrawing of witnesses, and we've seen the prosecutor being allowed to introduce 2 more witnesses in Ruto's case. What are your thoughts on that in terms of what we're expecting to see as the trial begins tomorrow going forward? What are we likely to see with all that? Because now it's a headache for the prosecutor.
I'm not as conversant with international law as I am with American law, which I have studied quite a bit and understood and lived under its jurisdiction. I can tell you, not only can you not discuss killing of witnesses, but what they call witness tampering. Witness tampering, and again, as I said, Google is your friend. Kenneth Fitzgerald versus Scooter Libby, 2004. The Chief of Staff in the Vice President's office, Vice President Dick Cheney, on the case of the exposure of a CIA lady, Valerie Plame, based on a small disagreement that was happening within the Vice President's office that led to the Chief of Staff being convicted for 30 years mandatory based on obstruction of justice. We have definitely, and the media needs to do a better job on this, had very serious reports on witnesses being bought, witnesses being intimidated, obviously. We even saw the story on yesterday. Benji. Yes, on this particular case, yes. And even witnesses being eliminated. To be honest, this puts the suspects, again, in a very dicey position. The International Criminal Court may not show all its cards at the same time, but I think that the strategy to defend against these accusations has been so desperate and so well concerted that it's been tried to get out of this case by any means necessary. And again, sometimes...
So you're saying the suspects are trying to get out of this case by any means necessary?
I think that that's been a strategy. I think that can be a perceived strategy. And I think it's a dangerous strategy.
Maybe I should say something, Sophia.
I think it's a dangerous strategy.
What Benji is saying is one side of the argument. But now I'm telling you reality. There's an affidavit sworn by the witness, one of the witnesses who withdrew. He said, I was jailed, I was coached, I was paid by the OTP office of the prosecutor. I was told to say this and this. I was given money, an affidavit sworn, and I am not able to stand now and tell those lies in court. So I have withdrawn. You see, so I'm telling you what is real. Benjamin is telling you a story.
But Moshu, what is real? Is it him saying you're scorched, or the first statements he made? How come you're so sure that this time around he's not telling a lie?
Let me tell you why.
I think you guys are playing with fire.
Let me tell you why.
This is an international criminal proceeding,
it could
not
be,
an international civil court.
No, let me tell you.
And I think that's the distinction that needs to be made.
Even if you are in any law, and I'm glad you said you studied law, the last statement, the last testament in any disposition, let's say you want to give your property to your children, right. It is the last testament that holds. And the last affidavit, the last sworn statement is the truth. That's why I'm telling you, Benja, that I am certain that it is true that what he said happened to him is a reflection of what is going on with those witnesses.
Okay. So if he sends another one tomorrow?
Gentlemen, we have to move
so if he sends another one tomorrow?
No, he won't sign because he is now telling the truth, the real
Nobody knows what will happen. We have to wait and see. But today, in the question of the day, we are asking our viewers what they think about the move by some members of the Jubilee, members of Parliament. They want names from the Waki envelope released, made public. What are your thoughts? That's the question we're asking today in the question of the day. And just remind our viewers, there it is on your screens. Do you support calls seeking to make public the Waki envelope, which contains 20 names of key suspects accused of perpetrating post-election violence? Send us your thoughts, 22155 at KTN Kenya. Use the hashtag Morning Express, and at Sophia Wanuna, the same hashtag. Let us know what your thoughts are. But gentlemen, your thoughts. Very quickly, please.
Quickly, I'll just say that this tells you why this court is really political. You have 20 suspects. Why do you pick 6? You know, Why do you narrow down to those 6? So if we are going to do this thing properly, let all Kenyans know what is happening, because unfortunately there has been a lot of propaganda by the ICC that what they are doing is right, and you know it's a Muzungu thing, and unfortunately Kenyans have not come out of Muzungu things. That's why even my good friend here is talking about black Italian suits and so on. You know, people have this thing that whatever Muzungu,
so you said
whatever
should be released.
Muzungu says is the truth. So this is the problem with the arguments that have been put. They are coming from international court, and then they're not telling you that there is a problem. Why is it number 1 out of 20 you have 6? Okay, so you support that they be. I support that these people, you know, Kenyans must have the full picture. The full picture
Benji.
of what is happening.
What is ironic to me, very briefly, Sophia, what is ironic to me is that some of the legislators jumping up and down and shouting the loudest on the floor of Parliament, some of whom you interviewed right in this studio, right on this couch, are themselves on some of these lists. And because, remember, you can extrapolate quite simply who is on the list of 20 based on the original list that the Waki Commission started investigations and relied upon, which was a list from the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, a list which is quite available. So some of the members of Parliament are very aware that their names are there. I have no opposition to this list being made public. I think that the attempts to guide the court, however, on how it's going to sit, how it's going to conduct the cases, what evidence will depend on upon, etc., that cannot come from KTN, that cannot come from the MP of Gatanga, that cannot come from the MP of Eldoret North or what have you. I think we need to be respectful of the court. We need to approach the court with all humility. Hubris is not your friend.
All right, changing topics. Last week, I don't know if you heard, but Judge Mohammed Ibrahim, representing the Chief Justice at an event, talked about the presidential election petition, and he said how that the timeline is very short. They need to change the law and perhaps expand that time, and made a sentiment, you know, indicating that perhaps if there was a longer period of time, the result of the presidential election petition would have been different. And that is something that people have looked at very, you know, with a pinch of salt. Why would that comment be coming from a judge in the Supreme Court?
If I can go first, you know, unfortunately, everything that we discuss political in this country today is seen through the lenses of either Uhuru on the one hand or Raila on the other hand. 50 years ago, these lenses were Jomo Kenyatta on the one hand, Jaramogi on the other. The truth of the matter is that after the election of this year, the country is more divided. 10 years ago, nobody talked about Kibaki being a Kikuyu. 10 years ago, we had a nation full of promise, a nation that was coming from a very difficult part.
To my question, Benji.
Now, we are such a divided country. The rifts are so deep. Some of the anger and bitterness is so bad. Yes, I agree with Justice Krigler, and I was just saying this yesterday on social media, that even with these cases starting, should anything trigger the dry wood and hay that is there, yes, this country is so combustible right now. Is so vulnerable.
I don't think I want this to go on.
That is absolutely the truth.
No.
That is absolutely the truth. We have to talk about the facts as they are. The country is so divided, and I must tell you, as much as Jubilee don't want to have this discussion,
responsible in the kind of things that we say on media. You cannot stand here.
Let me tell you,
in the morning,
the
people
court
are
leader
going to work.
No, the court
people
leader
are going to shambas and whatever, and you are telling people
the court leader
can inflame any time.
The court leader enjoys more governors than the president. The president has more legislators.
Look at the referendum question. Why is it that even court governors were now turning against that? It is wrong to say just because
the divisions
someone has been elected on a Wiper ticket, he supports the Wiper.
And I need us to come back to the question that we're discussing. What are your thoughts?
The divisions are troubling.
It is wrong for someone to use this, and you shouldn't allow this, for someone to use media to try and destroy what work is going on inside the country and what people want to see. obviously, even in America, there is Democrats and there are Republicans, but people don't come on TV to say it's going to inflame it. This is what Europeans are telling people to think of this country. And I'm not going to sit here and be part of that. Okay. We have divisions, but every other country has divisions.
Your comment on what
George Bush was my president, was very divided, and we said it.
Let me just say on the question of the judge. I think that there was a reason when we were discussing the Constitution why we had to set a 14-day limit for the Supreme Court to make decision. Yes. I think there was a reason why we also had to limit the petitions that have been in Parliament for parliamentary and even for governors and senators, because it had been a practice in the country that anytime you have a petition, it takes forever. In fact, there was a case in which a member of Parliament, you know, it was the case of Angatia. He stayed until there were, I think, 3 months to the election. That's when he was told that you have won the petition. I think it is wrong for us to hold the country for more than 14 days to decide what is supposed to happen.
The argument is that because of those 14 days, substantial justice was crucified on the altar of technicality.
And many people feel that. That's what I'm saying.
I want to say this. I want to say this, Sophia, sorry, that even when you are to sit an exam, you know, every one of us, yes, we want more time before we can write the KCSE exam, before we can do that final paper in the university. But we are within time. The code lawyers knew the limitations and the timelines. The Jubilee lawyers knew the limitations and the timelines. If you know you are supposed to do this and you don't file that affidavit on time, what is the court supposed to do? The court is supposed to, if it is an exam room, Sophia is not ready for the exam, so now let us extend, we do the exam next month.
Your point is,
I think I'm making this point, yes, that Kenyan people passed this constitution and they said, for the presidency, let us have quick determination of issues. Let us not keep issues. 14 days is enough to keep the country on tenterhooks. Let us have decisions. These decisions must be respected. And if the judge is speaking, I think he's expressing his personal opinion. If
I actually agree with him.
If he wants to say anything else, we have processes. You know, if you want to extend time, we have processes. There is a way you can amend this constitution.
I actually agree with him. Yes. I think that with the candidature of the court leader Raila Odinga, I think there are many other issues that have not been brought to the fore, that are not being discussed, so that a lot of the legal process and the whatnot was just to camouflage what is really going on. I think that there are serious issues. At what point they'll be discussed in this country, I don't know. But suffice to say that he's gone around and for good reason said that he's been stolen off or robbed of the presidency twice. But having said that, I urge all Kenyans to have the courage to put Kenya first. I urge that we don't sound juvenile and ridiculous. We are still a third world country that needs a lot of help from around the world, that needs a lot of partnerships. The way to go is not to say that we embrace China and everybody else can go to hell. And here I'm paraphrasing one of the members of Parliament on the floor. So we must try to be mature. We must try to lead this region and embrace the developed parts of the world that after all have been our friends for a long time. It is shallow and misguided to think that the ICC is here to crucify us. Let's pursue justice for the victims. Let's remember the lady whose hand was burned, some who were raped, people who lost their homes and what have you, Benji. And let us try to have a unified country. In 30 seconds, your last words.
Oh, nice.
On the whole discussion we've had today. Your parting short.
I think we need to remember one thing. We have a nation. Yes. And this nation is bigger than any individual, even bigger than any argument that people can put.
Or NGO.
And, or any NGO, for that matter. Let us be very careful. Our people shed blood to have this country stand as Kenya. I urge all Kenyans that we must resist any attempt by any foreign objects to make this country look like we are subject to to another nation. I urge Kenyans to remain firm, because the consequences of losing our sovereignty are higher than, and peace is better.
I urge you not to mislead the president.
Peace is better than retributive justice.
Danson Mungatana, former Assistant Minister, Justice and Constitutional Affairs, Benji, Ndolo, founder
Benjamin.
One. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Your thoughts, your arguments on each of the issues we've discussed, very much appreciated.
We'll do this again next week, and have a nice week.
We'll see you.
Thank you.
Have a lovely week.